All right, so I am going to be working on a still life here that features 3 eggs and 1 light source. So I've got some drapery in there, I've got a vase, I've got a box, and I've got a little plush toy. As you can see here, I've laid out a vertical and horizontal line on my page, just center lines. And you probably saw there that I was using my viewfinder. I was just looking through that little viewfinder to get an idea of where I'm going to place things. So this video is going to be a little bit of review on how to structure a drawing from start to finish. We are going to be applying a full range of value and things like that. The main things that I want to feature in this video are how to draw eggs with graphite pencil using a range of value, because it's more complex than you think, just because there's such a particular smooth shape, and they're really great to draw because if you get that strong, 1 light source on them, you'll be able to see all sorts of different things going on in the shadows. So I'll kind of talk about that once I get to that point. However, it will take me a little bit to get there because I am going to show you guys my process of getting to that point, because right now I'm just working on the construction drawing. So I do have a video that is on my channel that is just about construction drawing. So this one, you'll kind of get a little review on some of that stuff. So you can see here I'm doing a lot of measuring. I'm using my pencil as a vertical imaginary line as I look at the still life that's in front of me, and trying to see where things line up with the different objects. So I'm trying to get the placement just right, and then of course I'll also use the sighting technique to measure everything. So I'm kind of just trying to get something down on the page, trying to fill out the page, trying to get everything, trying to get a good balance, trying to get a good composition, right? So as you can see, I'm laying in all of the objects very loose, very simple, just as 2D shapes. That's always how you want to start out these drawings from observation, is just laying them out as these simple, loose shapes. And you'll see that the whole time I'm using the side of my pencil lead with a really light touch. So notice how I'm holding my pencil while I'm making lines. So I'm holding it to use the side of the pencil lead. So there you can see I'm doing some more measuring, and then it looks like I'm trying to figure out comparing the measurement of the box and comparing it probably to the measurement of the width of the vase. I know I was doing that quite a bit. I felt like it would be easier to do the drawing, film it, and then do the voiceover later. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to remember what I was looking at the time. But I'm trying to work around the whole drawing. So in other words, I'm not only focusing on one little area for a long time, I'm jumping around in order to make sure that I don't waste a lot of time developing one area if it's not going to work with the other areas, right? You got to make sure that all the items are in proportion with each other. So I'm not getting detailed at all yet. I'm really just putting in a very basic structure. So you kind of have to have something down on the page before you you know, measure, use the sighting technique, because you've got to have something to adjust. So when you're putting lines down on the page, you're doing it knowing that things are going to get adjusted, right? So that's why we always lay in those lines very light so they're easy to erase. And it's a lot of problem solving, and it takes time. In fact, I think that the most time that I spent on this drawing was this stage of just working through these proportions for these items. So you really do want to make sure that you've got a really strong plan for your drawing before you get into any kind of particular shapes or detail work, or even before filling in any value, of course, because you want to make sure the structure is really solid. So I'm just laying in a few landmark areas where the drapery is. I'm not going to get real into drawing the drapery in this demo because I really want to focus more on structuring the objects, adding the value, and especially featuring drawing the eggs. So so I will lay in, you know, the structure of where the fabric is, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time drawing the fabric. I have another video that features a still life with fabric and organic shaped items that I do a little more work on drawing fabric specifically. So if you want to learn more about fabric, you can head over to my channel and check that one out. But yeah, so this one features a lot of the construction of the drawing, and then later on in the video a lot of filling in the value. I'm sorry if you hear a lot of weird background noises. My cats decided that it's a good time to fight and play in the background, so they're making noise, and it's really aggravating me, but I'm doing my best. So, as you can see there, I'm paying a little more attention to the placement and the size of the eggs. I know for a fact that all 3 eggs are the same width, so you probably saw me checking the width and comparing it to the other egg on my drawing. So you know, that's one easy thing to check in your drawing, because if you are working on this project, then you know, you're setting up your own still life with your own items. However, the thing that's going to be the same as my drawing is that you're going to have 3 eggs in your still life setup and the 1 light source. So so with drawing the 3 eggs, just make sure that you're checking that all 3 eggs have the same length and width, unless you have one egg that's like tilted quite a bit, where it's like foreshortened, or it's like facing you instead of the side view of the egg. So of course in that case the egg may look more round rather than oval. But if you have all side views like my setup, then they're going to be real similar in their width and height. And as you can see, you know, I still laid in the shape of them pretty rough, and you probably saw I put a little center line through that horizontal egg that is towards the bottom of the composition. That can be really helpful, especially if your egg is like angled a certain way, just to get things looking symmetrical. When you have a center line through an object, like a symmetrical object, it helps you quite a bit to get each side looking equal in its shape. I would recommend that for any symmetrical object, just like this vase as well that I'm working on right now. You can see I've got a vertical and a horizontal center line going through it, and that's going to help me get each side of the vase looking the same. as I work on it. So those center lines are very, very helpful. So you can see there I'm making adjustments, and I'm just checking some more proportions again, because, you know, as you work on your drawing and things kind of shift around a little bit here and there, you always want to double check. Make sure you haven't missed anything, or make sure if something's changed that it's, you know, see if there's other areas of the drawing that need to change to adapt to that, you know, adjustment that you made. By the way, I believe this whole time I've been using a 2B pencil. I typically start out my drawings using a 2B pencil. An HB would be fine as well. They're very similar. The 2B is just a little bit softer. So I'm not sure if I'm still using that 2B or if I switch to the HB, but either one is totally fine to use at this point, because we're still just blocking things in. Once we get into adding the value, then we'll switch it up quite a bit with the range of pencils. So as you can see, just like a construction drawing that we normally do, I went ahead and I drew right through the form. So you can see that egg on top of the vase, I just drew the whole egg, right? So it helps me get the full shape of the egg, even though I'm going to erase the bottom of the egg that doesn't, you know, show. Even though I'll erase that later, initially you want to draw that whole thing. So now I'm working on that little mushroom guy. He's a little plush toy that I bought in Japan when I traveled there a couple years ago. So I think at this point I was pretty confident with my proportions for that little toy, and you know, that's why I felt confident to move on and, you know, add a few more things like the facial features and the little polka dots on the hat. I initially laid in the little arms and legs as just little circles, just as little placements of where they're going to be, and then later I make those shapes a little more particular. So that's always how you want to approach things. You want to go from simple shapes to medium shapes to small, or detail last. As you can see, what I'm doing right now is I put that line vertically, which separates the light and dark areas. So that's kind of how you start to approach the value in your drawings, is especially with this kind of like simple lighting situation where you have one light source. So you're going to have a light side and you're going to have a shadow side, and now you'll see me do it on the vase as well, and the egg. Even though there's a wide range of values, you're simplifying things by starting out with just identifying light and dark, or, you know, 2 or 3 values, right? And I'm just placing in some lines of where that's going to be placed. As I develop the drawing, it will get more complex and we'll have more than just those couple of values represented. But here you can see I've got it clearly mapped out. It's a good starting point. And I'm just using very angular lines. So as you can see, I'm not starting out with round organic lines because I want to simplify. Once again, when you're starting something out, you want to simplify it. And that will really help you with accuracy. Later on, you can round things out, which I'm doing right now actually. I'm starting to be more particular about the shape of the egg. I'm rounding out the edges, so I'm going from that simplified angular geometric shape to this more refined rounded shape. I'm still drawing through the form because I kind of need to get the shape right. And there you go. This is a great tip. As you're doing these rounded forms, feel free to move your board around so that you can get the right angle with your wrist to create those seamless rounded lines. And I'm just doing small little strokes, as you can see. So it's really hard to get round accurate lines if you do long strokes. So just go with small little pencil strokes as you keep turning your board around, as you kind of make your way around this egg form. And I believe I'm using the 2H. I was using the 2H pencil there. Most likely, either the 2H or the HB when I was cleaning up the lines. Yeah, now I'm definitely using the 2H pencil because I'm starting to add in value, and you always want to layer from the hard lead pencils to the soft leads. So my hardest lead pencil is the lightest one, which is 2H. That's the lightest one, at least in my selection of pencils that I have here. So I'm just doing one full layer of the 2H pencil in the shadow side. Okay. I believe I switched pencils to the next softest pencil, which is the HB. So as you can see, that's getting a little bit darker as I layer the HB on top. And I'm really making an effort to have a light touch with my pencil strokes close together for an even application of graphite. The reason that we do things this way instead of using blending stumps is because if you use blending stumps too often, it flattens the form quite a bit and it makes things look over blended and foggy and flat. We don't want that, and that's why I teach all my students to not use any blending stumps at all in their drawing, regardless if it's graphite or charcoal. We don't use any blending tools. We really just use this technique with the pencils, and it really gives a much more realistic look for the finished drawing. It gives so much more structure and clarification to the form. So this is a really important tip. Okay. So as you can see, I'm being real particular about where I'm adding darker value to the egg. I went back to the 2H and I'm just adding another layer and bringing it over to the right a little bit more, so the value kind of fades out as it goes towards the light side. And it's also, it's kind of a way of like softening things. If the area that you've been filling in is starting to look kind of grainy, and you want it to look a little more smooth, but you aren't using any blending stumps, you can actually do another layer of the 2H on top, and that will help soften the look. So that's another little tip. And I put that photo there just so that you can see what I'm working on. But just to be clear, I am working on this drawing looking at the setup from life. So the setup is actually on my desk in real life. I'm not using a photo to draw this drawing. So I think I'm still using the 2H. Let's see. What did I just switch to? The little numbers on the pencils are so small, sometimes it's hard for me to see. So I'm kind of going based off memory of which pencils I was using. Okay, now I know I'm using the 2H because I'm doing the first layer here, using the exact same technique as I did on the egg for the vase. So, and you probably noticed that when I do one layer, I keep all of my pencil strokes same direction. And here I'm doing a second layer with a 2H, but I switched directions just to kind of help myself get a good even application. And you'll kind of see things jumping around because I did a little bit of editing because this video was so long. So just if it looks like I didn't do a full layer, I did, but I was editing the video to be a little bit shorter. So if you see me start doing a section to fill in, just know that I filled in the entire section. I just didn't want to bore you with this extremely long video. So like there, I just cut. So I did fill in that entire area with probably, I'm guessing I'm using a 2H right now, or no, HB pencil, because that was a little bit darker than the 2H. Oh, right there I was like, oh, that's too dark. I switched back to the 2H to do that first layer. So each time I go to an area to layer, I start with the 2H and then go to the HB for the second layer and then go to the 2B for the third layer. If it needs to get darker after that, I might do another layer of the 2B, or I might move on to the 4B. It just kind of depends on how dark I want it to get. And stuff like that. And I also had a 6B, but I didn't really use it actually on this drawing. I think the darkest pencil I used was the 4B, and I didn't really use the 4B that much. I probably would have used it if I had really fully rendered the entire drawing, but I don't know. I felt like I could get pretty dark values with the 2B and the 4B and as you can see from the reference photo, there's only a few areas that get super, super dark. So anyway, yeah, as you can see, again, I'm going with that layer a different direction to just kind of get a real even application. And now I'm back to the 2H pencil and I'm bringing that layer out further because, as you can see from my reference photo, that vase is like a brown color, so it's not as light in value as the white of my paper. So I do have to bring that graphite over, you know, throughout the whole vase because I need to darken the value overall. And you can see that little highlight there I erased again because I want to keep that brighter than everything else on the vase. So I get that range of value from dark to light. And there I go again, there's another layer. And cleaning up the edge there with my kneaded eraser. So as you can see, the outlines or edges of a lot of these objects are not harsh outlines. Not everything needs a crisp edge, right? Like, see where I'm working right there on that side of the vase? The edge is not super crisp. It could maybe use a crisp edge there, but it doesn't really need it. I can get a crisp edge just by cleaning up the edge with my eraser. I don't necessarily have to draw a line to separate the vase from the background, right? The separation happens just because the value changes. The background is white and the vase has the darker value. So, so right now, because this drawing we're adding value, we've got to think more in terms of shapes rather than lines. You know what I mean? We're filling in shapes. So not everything needs an outline, because heavy outlines or too many outlines will flatten the image and it won't have the realistic look that we're going for. So I'm just filling in some value on these other objects, starting out with a 2H pencil once again, just starting out kind of treating that little mushroom guy as you know, two values at first, the shadow side and the light side, and then I can get more complex with it later. There you can see I'm adding another layer with probably the HB pencil to darken that side. And here I think I am making the shapes of the arms and feet a little more particular, because I had initially just laid it in as like little circles. So now I'm going in and using some angular lines to make those shapes a little more specific. And as you can see, that kneaded eraser is awesome because I can just mold it into a point so I can do some detail erasing, which is really nice. And I've got a darker lead pencil, could be a 2B, I'm not sure, but I'm just darkening the areas on that shadow side. And also there's just a lot of lines going on that side near the fabric lines, and that's one way to kind of clarify an area. When there's a lot of different lines intersecting, you can use some line quality variation. Anyway, I'm moving on to the eggs at the bottom of the composition now. Same thing, 2H for the first layer. And I'm just rechecking my work before I go any further. As you could see, I was measuring a little bit there, and I just want to make sure that these eggs are the right size, that they're lined up appropriately with everything else. Even though I did that earlier, I just want to make sure because I want to be real particular. I want to be real exact because these eggs were laid out very roughly and very, you know, loose and simple shapes. So now I want to get a little more specific with their shape. So you can see I'm lining it up to see, okay, where does the edge of that egg line up with the other items above the eggs? That's how you know if they're in the right position. So now you'll see me going back and forth between my sharp pencil and my eraser to crispen up those edges. So I believe I'm using the 2H, either 2H or HB. Probably the 2H. And turning the paper once again to get that right, you know, angle for my wrist and for the curves that I want. But you'll also see me doing a lot of, you know, movement from my shoulder rather than from my wrist to get those like rounded lines. Oh, see, yeah, I'm putting the center line back in on that egg just to make sure that I'm, you know, keeping it symmetrical as I do my cleanup work. You don't want a lopsided egg. That will not be convincing to your audience. And I think it's helpful to look at your drawing from different angles. It really helps you look at everything in terms of shapes rather than when you look at something right side up, your brain recognizes it and says, oh yeah, that's an egg, and it looks fine. But as soon as you turn it upside down and you look at it as a shape instead of as an egg, then you can start to recognize if there's any errors or if there's anything that needs adjustment. All right, so I'm happy with the adjustments I made. I'm going back in with you know, with another layer of that 2H just to make sure everything is nice and even and cleaned up, and I got a good solid first layer there. Again, I just kind of started out with the light side and the shadow side, and from there I will make things more complex as I get more particular about where things get darker. I think I moved into the HB for that next layer. And there's a little bit of reflective light down there, I think. I'm just touching up with the eraser, eliminating some of those messy lines and putting that edge back in there. Okay, and now the core shadow there where it gets a little bit darker, I'm doing another layer there just to darken that area. Don't forget as you're drawing to keep checking to make sure all of your pencils are still sharpened. And once again, I saw a little bit of reflective light there, so I was just cleaning things up, cleaning up the edge, I think, as well. I haven't laid in the cast shadow yet, but I will after I finish the value on the egg. So I'm not sure if I switched to my 2B yet, but that would be the next step for the areas that are getting a little bit darker to move to the next darkest pencil lead. So as you can see, I'm really taking my time here. I'm actually looking back and forth between my still life and the drawing quite frequently, which can be easy to forget to look because you feel like in your mind that you already know what it looks like, but it's very important to keep referencing what's there in real life, because if you can see in that reference that you know, there is quite a range of shadow. There's the light side with the highlight, there's the core shadow, there's the reflective light, you know, on that shadow side, and there's also the cast shadow. So there's a lot going on, and it you know, there's kind of like this gradient effect, like the light really softly changes from light to dark. And anyway, here is what I wanted to show you. You could see that I finished that egg and I did the cast shadow. And then the egg to the right of it, I left that one unfinished so that you can see what it looks like when you start it and you've got just the basic form filled in with the angular shapes or the angular lines, and just having the light and, you know, two values, light and dark, filled in, really simple. So that's kind of how you start. And then the egg that I finished, you can see I just added layers on top. So you always want to work in this layering kind of a fashion anytime you approach these still life from observation drawings where you're going for realism. It's the best way to get a soft look without using any blending tools. You can see how even the different areas look, and they still look very structured, very convincing. Now this is not a finished drawing, but the areas that I wanted to demonstrate for you are, you know, finished. I did some work on the eggs, got a range of value. You can clearly see the light source where it's coming from, and the shadow side. We've got the cast shadow in there. So I hope that this helps to give you some good tips for how to approach using a range of value with graphite pencils, and how to approach drawing eggs. So thank you so much for watching, and good luck with your drawing.